So, on our cool down today, let's talk about life in Khare, the remote area in which you are, as we talked about, with Mount Meru. So, you've spent a lot of time in the Himalaya at this point over the last 5 or 6 years. What have you learned from your previous expeditions and time there, and how has that helped shape your setup in Khare for this last stage in preparation for Project Himalaya?
The big thing was honestly just setting up in one place. I think one of the ways that people or the way that people usually come and climb these mountains, which is really fun and adventurous, is you hike in and that's all part of the training, right? And so you're never really spending more than a few days in one place until you get to Everest Base Camp or Manaslu Base Camp or whatever it is. And then maybe you're there for 3 or 4 weeks and you can kind of set up shop there. But you usually have like a whole month or even a couple weeks at least of kind of lead in time. And I love that for what it's worth. Like I love the adventure part and seeing all these different places. But I knew from a training perspective, like we've talked about lots of times, I'm a creature of habit, I'm a creature of routine. And I train best when I have a home base set up where I have everything I need and I know exactly what I'm going to do every day. And so that was really the big thing that I learned from Manaslu last year was still we were only on at base camp for I don't know maybe 3 weeks before I did the FKT. But I had a really good setup there and I had a really good training, like little regimen of, going up the trail and up and down the same exact trail every day and then getting on the bike in the afternoon. And so I kind of took that and I took what I had developed as my routine in keto and I was like, okay, how can I take that and and set it up here in the rural Himalaya, which was, easier said than done. That was complicated, but I feel like we've now done that. So I think that was really the big thing. At first, it was just following the conventional wisdom of, you hike in, you see the sights, you spend a few days here, you go to this mountain, you go to that mountain, and you're bouncing all over the place. And then finally you go to base camp. And here it was like, okay, I've had a really good training block in keto. And that has been incredibly ritualistic and boring for most people, but it was really fun for me. And how can I just take that and plant it in the Himalaya, recreate that as much as possible while also adapting to, the very unique needs of being in the Himalaya and then setting that up in a place where I can go to Everest really quickly when the window opens. So that's really been the big thing is just, okay, setting up shop here, being in one place.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it certainly does feel different, I think, from certainly from the first couple of times that you went into the Himalayas. So it sounds like you've learned a lot about this, and it makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
And and let me add, like, I think a lot of people will criticize some athletes that do this, where it's like you're missing out so much on, a big part of the expedition, which is the hike in and this and that. And I agree with that. I think that that is a really important part of, an adventure, of a trip, of an expedition is the approach coming through, like seeing the valleys and the little towns along the way and getting to meet people and all that stuff. 100%, that is correct. And I completely recognize that in doing what I'm doing of coming directly here, basically from keto, like, I stopped for 24 hours in Massachusetts and 24 hours in Kathmandu, and otherwise I was in transit all the way from keto to Kare. I am missing a lot of that stuff, but it's also, like you framed in that question, it's like, I think I've spent 8 seasons in the Himalaya at this point. I have done all those things. I've seen those places and I recognize that I'm not doing that this time. And that's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make because this is the way that I can prepare best for what I'm trying to do, which is something that is really, really hard. And like by definition, no one has ever done it before. So like it's going to require doing things differently. So yes, if it were like up to me of pure enjoyment factor of what's the best way to get to Kara, yeah, hiking in here is beautiful. It's an incredibly beautiful valley. But also when I think about what's the best way for me to prepare for Everest as a job, which is what that is for me right now, it means, okay, getting here and setting up shop and then just doing the same trail every single day?
Yep, yep, makes sense. Okay, so take us through a normal day in Kare, and how is that different than keto? And also, how is it different from the other people who are there, the sort of the regular trucker climber people that are staying at the lodge and going up the mountain?
Yeah, so let me I guess let me walk you through a day. So I usually wake up to the light I don't know, 6:30, something like that, after a solid 12 horizontal hours, as we talked about before. And then I usually spend like at least an hour and a half of just like procrastinating in the morning because it's so cold. Like I wake up and it's, 24 degrees Fahrenheit in my bedroom. And so I bundle up and put on all my layers and I go have some hot coffee and, we'll like respond to some messages because like I'm 12 hours off the United States. So I'll usually have, messages from family and friends and stuff. Maybe do a little writing, do a little reading, take some pictures. It's usually really pretty in the mountain. And then basically the whole rest of the morning is my morning training session. So I'm trying to do usually 3 to 3.5 hours on feet. Again, I always procrastinate of just like getting ready. So even little things of filling up my bottles and getting my gels or whatever, like all that stuff, it just ends up taking more time. I think everything up here takes more time because there's less oxygen. I'll blame it on that. And then, yeah, it's usually maybe 2.5 hours just going up the mountain and getting as high as I can. Sometimes that's the summit. Sometimes it's 6,000, 6,200, something like that. And then that's like kind of the high point of my day, get like literally and figuratively, and then nice easy jog back down. And then I usually have a nice meal here. So that's one of the wonderful things about this little town where I'm staying. There's probably 6 little lodges here, and I've gotten to know the people. They take really good care of me, and so I come back in and have some dalbat, which is just rice and lentils and some curry. Basically, it's a really classic thing here in Nepal. Maybe some soup if it's really cold, and rest a little. Do some writing in the afternoon, and then I'll get on the bike, the hypoxic bike, for usually an hour and a half in the afternoon, and then usually do some stretching, some kind of strength, like light strength or mobility after that. And then at that point, it's pretty much dinner time. It's a pretty much full-time job when you factor in all the procrastinating. So yeah, evenings I'll sometimes chit chat with some other people, climbers coming through the lodge and stuff. And otherwise, yeah, getting horizontal around sunset and again, doing some reading and writing and enjoying a lot of time for recovery there. So that's my day. The other part of the question about how is that different from a normal person's day? Well, like with the first question, most people are here as a stepping stone for going to the summit of Mera Peak. And for a lot of people, that's a multi-day project. So if they're here in Khare with where I am, a lot of the time this is like a rest day for them. So we have like a really beautiful little glass enclosed kind of porch area that gets warm with the afternoon sun. So a lot of people are just kind of sitting in there chit-chatting. A lot of people in the morning are getting ready to go up to high camp, and then from high camp they'll make their summit bid the next day. So I feel like there's a lot of kind of like nervous energy sometimes because you have all these climbers and they're like getting ready for this big thing. It's like really intense, and it's really fun to talk to people. And then the other energy is the people who just came down, who are like all like stoked and confident because they just climbed this big mountain and they're like really excited to talk about it and stuff. So, yeah, it's I would say my lifestyle is probably pretty different from the average person coming through here. But yeah, it's been really fun getting to know people. I think we talk about that a little bit later on in the questions here.
Yeah, nice. So tell us a little bit more about the accommodations. We talked about the fact that there's no heat there, and you just mentioned it's 24 degrees in your room. And in fact, looking at you now, you're dressed in your parka with your hat on. So it's clearly cold.
Yep.
And you sent us tons of pictures showing us all the snow and the mountains and everything. So beyond the heating, what other kinds of comforts are you missing? How Spartan is it?
Well, like we were saying offline before we started recording, we do not have sit down toilets here. That's a big one. We have squatty potties, which for those of you guys who have never had the privilege, a squatty potty is anything from basically just a hole in a piece of plywood, um, to what we have here is actually I guess I'll put a picture somewhere on Instagram or something, but it's actually a porcelain thing with little foot places where you put your feet, and then there's kind of a little dish almost in the middle with a hole that goes down, to wherever it goes. So it's good for your ankle and hip mobility, I would say, but it's definitely a little bit less comfortable and a little bit chilly sometimes first thing in the morning. So that's definitely something. And then I would say electricity is the other big thing that can be tricky, and connectivity in general. I enjoy being disconnected. Like I've been very plugged from social media and stuff like that, and kind of keeping my close family friend circle appraised of everything that's going on here. And that's been really nice to be able to have kind of just enough connectivity to keep in touch with the people who I really care about. That's been great. But at the same time, yeah, like every once in a while, it's like I was trying to book a flight the other day and it kept crashing. It's like, oh gosh, come on. But then it's also like, come on, dude, look at where we are. Like the fact that I can do any of that stuff and like be in touch with my family and like do a video call with my dad is like incredible. So it's all good.
Indeed. Okay. So a Spartan lifestyle for those working on the high mountains. In
Yeah.
Quito, you had a big community. You had other athletes, you had friends, you had Ryan and Sarah Hall come visit. Do you
Yeah.
feel loneliness there where you are now, or have you made friends and connections out there?
I mean, the good news is not yet. I think it's all felt, new and exciting enough that I haven't like I just described those days. Like my days somehow still feel pretty full. I think like when I left keto, I was like, oh yeah, like I have like an hour a day that I'm in the car basically, like going back and forth to the mountain. Like I'm gonna get an extra hour. And then really it's like I just spent an extra hour sleeping because I'm 2,000 meters higher and that's what my body needs. So my days feel just as full as they did in keto, and it's like we were just talking about. It's great to be able to stay, a little bit in touch with friends and stuff from home, and then in terms of meeting people here, it's been fun. Yeah, just like there's a constant stream of people, and it's funny because I'll see a climbing party of like I don't know 6 friends or something who are here. In Khare in the lodge, and then tomorrow I'll see them hiking up to high camp, and then the next day I'll see them hiking down from high camp, like all these days, like when I'm going up and down the mountain, and then the next day they'll be back here in Kare, like in the lodge again. So it's like I see the same people over and over again, and like some of them have chit chatted, especially because like what I'm doing is pretty clearly not normal, and so that
Uh-huh.
raises some eyebrows. And so, yeah, I've had some interesting conversations and stuff. But the other part of it is, I do have other people who are coming here, which is really exciting. So my climbing partner, Chris Fisher, and his partner, Aaron Tunn, are actually in the Kumbu. Like as the crow flies, they're like literally on the other side of that mountain right now. But again, it's like one of those you can't get there from here. So they're both very close and very far away. And Chris is coming here to Kare in a week or two to train and hang out a little bit, and then we'll go to Everest together. And then my very good friend David Wilder as well is actually coming out, I think, next week. So that'll be fun to have some familiar faces as stuff starts to maybe get a little bit more tedious or boring or repetitive. But honestly, I'm not too worried about that.
Okay. Sounds good. And so you've shown us lots of photos, sent us lots of photos of the beautiful environment in Kare. It looks pretty harsh. What's the one thing or more than one thing? What are the most challenging things you didn't expect or anticipate? And how are you adjusting and adapting?
The most challenging things I didn't anticipate. That's a good question. Honestly, I feel like I kind of knew what I was getting into. I'm not sure there were any like really big surprises. I think how cold it was, we've talked about a couple times. I think that was just like a little bit of a shock to the system. It's one thing to remember like, oh, it's cold there. And then it's another thing to, be sleeping in a, -40 sleeping bag in a parka, like every single night. And so I think that's probably the only thing that I would say is like harder than I maybe gave it credit for ahead of time. But it's not like I didn't expect it. Like I knew it. I just like kind of probably downplayed it in my mind a little bit. I think that's really it. And also just like it's been very snowy the last week. I don't know if that's totally normal for this time. I think it's actually really good because the Himalaya had a very dry winter. All the mountains are super dry up high, which is good and bad. It means they're icy. It means there's more rock. It means there's probably less potential for avalanche, which is a good thing when there's less snow. But it can make the climbing a little bit trickier. And I think yeah, having just these small storms that have come through this week, I think it's a good thing.
Okay. All right. So we talked a little bit about communication with the outside world. Just expand on that a little bit about how being so far away and with so many things lacking in terms of electricity, connectivity, et cetera, how does that affect your ability to communicate with the outside world, both personal connections and for your professional obligations for Chosky and your sponsors and such?
Mostly, I'm incredibly lucky because I have a incredible team of people that help me manage my life. So I tried hard to set all this stuff up ahead of time because again, it's not my first rodeo here, and I knew that I was going to be just training a lot and really tired. And like we talked about, everything just takes more energy up here, physically and mentally. And I knew that the more that I can front load that and delegate stuff ahead of time and set up these teams of people to support me before I get here, the easier my life will be and the better I'll be able to focus on training and the project and everything like that. So that's the number one, is just like, no man is an island, and I may be here by myself in the middle of the Himalaya, but I have this incredible team of people, like I've talked about Jim Corville, my agent, Kat and Jason Anderson, who do all of our social media and editing and stuff like that, Jay and Brian at Chosky. So like I've really found some incredibly fantastic people to help do all of the kind of work obligations that I knew would be hard to deal with. And even like, I mean, you guys helping me with like my Amazon returns and stuff. Like literally, there's so many
Yep.
people in my life. Like if I didn't have all of those people, I don't know what I would do. Like literally today, Connor and I were like texting about trying to find like a timer app that would like notify, but it's not that interesting. But like, I've got Connor back on his couch in Waltham, like helping me figure out like Android app stuff, so it really is just, it takes a village, and it's a cliche, but there's a lot of truth in it. And I'm just so grateful for all the people in my corner, and whether they're literally here in Nepal with me right now or all over the world, it's just been, they've made my life feasible. It's just like would be completely impossible without all of them. So yes, I'm grateful for the satellite internet, who provider name I will not give any credit to, but that's been great. But at the same time, it's more important to have these people around the world who I trust and who are just doing such a fantastic job of, helping me keep my life together, literally.
Okay, great. So I'm very curious, and you mentioned a little bit about the other people going up and down the mountain, but it's a very popular, as you said, trekking peak for a lot of people. It's a lower peak and a training peak, maybe for people getting ready for bigger mountains. So, how have the other climbers and trekkers reacted to seeing you repeatedly running up and down the mountain every day?
Yeah, so there's two different kinds of people. So there's a Sherpa who work here and are up and down the mountain every day themselves. And then there's the clients, the foreign climbers who are coming here. A lot of the time, it's maybe their first big peak, maybe their first time on snow, things like that. So the Sherpa, I think, figured out pretty quickly that like, oh, there's this kid in town who's just like running up and down the mountain every day. And they're super like, I've befriended a bunch of them, and like we'll like fist bump and they'll be like, hey, it's the runner guy. Like, now it's they all, because like I wear the same clothes every day. So they know who I am. It's really easy to spot me. And I'm also the only guy running for the most part.
Yep.
So there's this fun kind of camaraderie there, because like those guys work so hard. Like what I'm doing is unique, and I'm moving quickly, but I'm not carrying hardly anything. These guys are hauling loads. Like they have like two giant duffel bags on their back. I saw a guy today with like a full size like stove, like a burner, like a one burner stove with a propane tank on his back, and a basket, like literally a
Wow.
basket on his back with a stove in it. It must have weighed like 60 pounds. So these guys are just working so freaking hard. So I think there's like a really cool, just kind of mutual respect there between us, of like seeing, hey, you guys are working really hard. And I think they see that I'm working pretty hard too a lot of the time. And that's really cool. And then on the other side, you have the clients, and mostly I think I get confusion from them. Just like, what is going on? You know, like what on earth is this guy doing? And I will say, like, uh, I try to be very cognizant of the fact that I'm super comfortable out there. This is my backyard at this point, and there are a lot of people for whom it's their first time walking on unbalanced rocks and snow. So I always try to give those people a right of way, and like I try to go out of the way and around, and let people know if I'm coming through. I've seen other athletes, um, whether it's in trail running or in the mountains, where there's a sense of entitlement that, oh, because I'm faster than you, that I have more of a right to be here. And that's always rubbed me the wrong way. It's like they have just as much of a right to be on the mountain as me. It's like one of the big questions we get about the Everest project is like, oh, do you get to shut down the whole mountain and run up by yourself? It's like, no, we have no more of a right to be on the mountain than any of the other climbers. We paid our permits just like they did, and they have just as much of a right to be here as we do. So I think that's a really important thing to remember, is like, we're all in this space together. And so I try to give those people a lot of space usually. Like I can tell if someone's like a little nervous on the terrain or something, and I'll give them a really wide berth and let them know I'm coming and things like that. And honestly, like everybody has been super nice. Like I don't usually get a ton of people who like talk to me because I'm going by kind of quickly on the mountain, but a lot of the time in the lodge, like people will come up to me and be like, what's your deal? Like, who are you? Like, what are you doing here?
What are
Like,
you
especially
doing?
because my
Yes.
bike, the bike in the or altitude mask setup is like kind of off in a corner in the common area. So like I'm literally like a sideshow in the afternoons there, where like everybody is just like sitting there having their like afternoon latte or whatever. And then I like put on this mask and I'm just like biking over in the corner by myself. And everyone's like, what are you like? Why do you need more exercise? What are you doing? You know? Uh, but no, it's definitely spawned some interesting conversations. I've gotten to know some people here, and they yeah, everybody who's come up to me has been super kind uh, and encouraging, and yeah, it's been really fun just getting to meet people. Like it's so cool, like seeing some of these people who are literally like on their first 6,000 or their first glaciated peak and learning to put their crampons on and stuff. So it's really cool to meet people in that situation, and yeah, kind of see that they're falling in love with the mountains like right now. It's really cool.
Great. Great. Okay. That's it for me. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's a good place to leave it. Again, like I'll kind of sign off with the same thing I said before. It's like, Khare has definitely started to feel a little bit like home over the last week, and it's definitely, it's a home office, I would say. Like there's a lot of work that I'm doing here, but it's also just one of the most beautiful places on earth. I think for anyone who's ever in this region, if you're coming to Everest Base Camp, it's definitely a little bit out of the way, and I think that's a good thing. It's less crowded than the whole Everest Base Camp trail kind of highway section that's all in the Khumbu, but it is so beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful valleys, and Mera is one of the most beautiful mountains I've ever been on. And yeah, I'd 100% encourage anybody in Nepal to make the trip out here, spend that extra week, and come check this place out. It's really unbelievably beautiful.
Okay. So check it out
Excellent.
if you get the chance and you're in the area. All right. Read us
Definitely.
out then, sir.
All right, I will read us out, guys. Thank you for this is our first live episode from Nepal slash Massachusetts. Hopefully this all worked and we'll get it all to you guys in the next week. Please send any feedback, your questions, comments, concerns, hopes, dreams. You can send those to me, ty@chosky.run, or DM me, Tyler C. Andrews on Instagram. Remember, you can also read my raw training logs. This is all multimedia. That's at tylercandrews.com. Click on the blog and that'll take you over to Substack. Lastly, this is a Chosky Media production brought to you by Chosky Endurance Collective, the world's leader in online coaching, community, and travel for endurance athletes. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will talk to you next week. Ciao.